Hi, boys and girls. Miss Bullis, how are you? I want to let you know first that I miss all of you very, very much. I wanted to start a chapter book. I would love to read Saving Winslow, but unfortunately Amazon is delivering it in a few days. So I opted for another chapter book. I think you're going to love it. It's called The Trumpet of the Swan. It is by E.B. White, who is the same author that wrote Charlotte's Web. So I'm going to begin reading. I will have my head down somewhat. I hope that you can hear me. And here we go. Brand new book. Brand new. Delivered. Chapter 1 is called Sam. Walking back to camp through the swamp, Sam wondered whether to tell his father what he had seen. I know one thing, he said to himself. I'm going back to that little pond again tomorrow, and I'd like to go alone. If I tell my father what I saw today, he will want to go with me. I'm not sure that's a very good idea. Sam was 11. His last name was Beaver. He was strong for his age and had black hair and dark eyes, almost like a Native American. Sam walked like a Native American too, putting one foot straight in front of the other and making very little noise, the way you should walk through the swamp. The swamp through which he was traveling was a wild place. There was no trail, and it was boggy underfoot, which made walking difficult. Every 4 or 5 minutes, Sam took his compass out of his pocket and checked his course to make sure he was headed in a westerly direction. Canada is a big place. Much of it is wilderness. To get lost in the woods and swamps of Western Canada would be a serious matter. As he trudged on, the boy's mind was full of the wonder of what he had seen. Not many people in the world have seen the nest of a trumpeter swan. Sam had found one on the lonely pond on this day in spring. He had seen the 2 giant great white birds with their long white necks and black bills. Nothing he had ever seen before in all of his life had made him feel quite the way he was feeling right now. They were no much bigger than any bird he had ever seen before. The nest was big too, a mound of sticks and grasses. The female was sitting on eggs. The male glided slowly back and forth, guarding her. When Sam reached camp tired and hungry, he found his father frying a couple of fish for dinner. Where have you been? Asked Mr. Beaver. Exploring, replied Sam. I walked over to a pond about 1.5 miles from here. It's the one we saw from the air as we were flying in. It isn't much of a place. Nowhere near as big as this lake we're on. Did you see anything over there? His father asked. Well, said Sam, it's a swampy pond with a lot of reeds and cattails. I don't think it would be any good for fishing. And it's hard to get to. You have to cross a swamp. See anything? Repeated Mr. Beaver. Well, I saw a muskrat, said Sam, and a few red-winged blackbirds. Mr. Beaver looked up from the wood stove where the fish were sizzling in a pan. Sam, he said, I know you like to go exploring, but don't forget, these woods and marshes are not like the country around home in Montana. If you ever go over to that pond again, be careful you don't get lost. I don't like you crossing swamps. They're treacherous. You could step into a soggy place and get bogged down, and there wouldn't be anyone to pull you out. I'll be careful, said Sam. He knew perfectly well he would be going back to the pond where those beautiful swans were. And he had no intention of getting lost in the woods. He felt relieved that he had not told his father about seeing the swans, but he felt strange about it too. Sam was not a sly boy, but he was odd in one respect. He liked to keep things to himself. And he liked being alone, particularly when he saw something special in the woods. He enjoyed the life on his father's cattle ranch in the sweet grass country in Montana. He loved his mother. He loved Duke, his cow pony. He loved riding the range. He loved watching guests who came to board at the Beavers' ranch every summer. But the thing he enjoyed most in life, the thing he enjoyed most of all, was his camping trips in Canada. With his father, Mrs. Beaver didn't care for the woods, so she seldom went along. It was usually just Sam and Mr. Beaver. They would motor to the border and cross into Canada. There, Mr. Beaver would hire a bush pilot to fly them down to the lake where they would set up camp. Mr. Beaver did most of the fishing and loafing. Sam did most of the exploring, and then the pilot would return to take them out. His name was Shorty. They would hear the sound of his motor and run out and wave and watch him glide down onto the lake and taxi his plane to the dock. There were the pleasantest days of Sam's life. These days in the woods, far, far, far from everywhere. No automobiles, no roads, no people. No noise, no school, no homework, no problems, except possibly the problem of getting lost. And of course, the problem of what to be when he grew up. Every boy, I think, has that problem. After supper that evening, Sam and his father sat for a while on the porch. Sam was reading a bird book. "Pop," said Sam, "do you think we'll be coming back to camp again about a month from now? I mean, in about 35 days or so?" "I guess so," replied Dad. "I certainly hope so. But why 35 days? What's so special about 35 days? "Oh, nothing," said Sam. "I just thought it might be very nice around here in 35 days. "Well, that's the craziest thing I have ever heard," said Mr. Beaver. "It's nice here all the time." Sam went indoors. He knew a lot about birds, and he knew it would take a swan about 35 days to hatch her eggs. He hoped he could be at the pond to see the young ones when they came out of the eggs. Sam kept a diary, a day book about his life. It was just a cheap notebook that was always by his bedside. And every night, before he turned out the light, he would write in the book. He wrote about things he had done, things he had seen, and thoughts he had had. Sometimes he drew a picture. He always ended by asking himself a question so he would have something to think about while falling asleep. On that day, he found the swan's nest. This is what Sam wrote in his diary. "I saw a pair of trumpeter swans today on a small pond east of camp. The female has a nest with eggs in it. I saw 3, but I'm going to put 4 in the picture. I think she was laying another one. This is the greatest discovery I have ever made in my whole entire life." I did not tell Pop. "My bird book says baby swans are called cygnets. I am going back tomorrow to visit the great swans again. I heard a fox bark today." "Why does a fox bark? Is it because he is mad or worried or hungry, or because he is sending a message to another fox? Why does a fox bark?" Sam closed his notebook and undressed, crawled in his bunk, and lay there with his eyes closed, wondering why a fox barks. And in a few minutes, he was sound asleep. So that's chapter 1, and I'd like you to look for some questions that I may be asking you as we move forward in the reading. I hope you enjoyed the first chapter.